Hello, my name is Paul Godwin from Godwin Insights, and today we are talking with Stephanie Manley, who is Senior Framework Manager at KCS,
Hi.
and Victoria Pittman of Granby. Granby are an approved supplier on the KCS framework, courier services and specialist logistics. This webinar is directed primarily at suppliers who've yet to be awarded contracts on a framework. And in the next 20 minutes or so, we hope to answer all the burning questions you may have. This will include: what is a framework? How do I get onto a framework? As an SME, what chance have I of being awarded work under a framework? What are direct awards? And above all, how much does it cost? Today, we're going to have Stephanie sharing the technical answers and the view from KCS, and Victoria sharing her experience with Granby of accessing and being awarded public sector contracts through frameworks. Are there any issues any first-time suppliers should be aware of, for example? So we're going to kickstart with the most important question, and an easy one to ask, probably a more difficult one to answer. What is a framework, Stephanie?
Okay, so a framework agreement is a procurement tool that is used within the public sector to procure goods and services that fall over a certain value, and that is to be in line with the Public Contract Regulations 2015. It's about spending the public's money in a compliant way. So by using a framework agreement, they can have access to suppliers who have already gone through a process. They have been vetted, they have been checked for their financial standing, for insurances, to ensure that they are actually able to provide the goods and services that are applicable on that framework within the public sector. And it will also, a framework agreement will cover a variety of products, services, but also SMEs and larger business suppliers.
Thanks for that. And Victoria, is that how a supplier would view frameworks?
Yes, is the short answer. The longer answer is, that we know that frameworks offer a much easier and economical way for a customer to compliantly purchase goods and services, and for a supplier to tender for a contract than through an open tender process. But we also know that this is a way that really does work best, advantage for customers and suppliers, and that includes SMEs who may have thought these contracts were out of their reach. We, Granby, have been able to compete cost effectively for contracts and have been awarded those contracts using frameworks.
Thanks for that. There will be suppliers watching this webinar who will be asking the most important question for them, which is, can they and who else can use a framework?
So frameworks are open, or our frameworks are open to all public sector organisations. So they could be wholly public sector, or they may be partly publicly owned. That it will include areas such as charities, schools, academies, blue light services, NHS, central government, local government. So anyone that comes under that public sector organisation. All of our frameworks will also have notices that are published on the Find a Tender service, and within that there is a full list of those people who can access it. And what customers can do as well is, if they're ever unsure, they can just contact us, let us know, and we will find out for them, and we will give them the audit trail that they need to say, yes, you are able to use the framework.
Thanks very much. And Victoria, from the point of view of a supplier, what have you made of the opportunities to use frameworks, and how have they changed over the last couple of years?
So we're on a couple of the frameworks with KCS and other framework providers, and the process was relatively straightforward. And now we've engaged with these frameworks, we are aware of the opportunities that come through. I think the difficulty for others is they may not be aware of the opportunities, and that's why we're working with KCS to raise awareness. And so we'd say that there are opportunities, but speaking on behalf of SMEs across the country, historically there may have been a lack of awareness. And this is why this initiative with KCS is so important, to help ensure both SMEs as well as publicly owned organisations are fully aware of not just the opportunity, but also the process.
Thanks for that, Victoria. Now, why would a public sector customer choose to use a framework? Because they don't have to, and not all of them have done. But Stephanie, why would a public sector customer choose to use a framework?
Okay, so public sector customers would need to use a framework only if their orders were going to be over the threshold that is set by the procurement regulations. That does vary year on year. If they're going to have one that goes over that threshold, they have to either use a framework or do their own full tender process. Now, a tender process, it does take quite a lot of time and expertise as well in order to get the right information and the right documents out there, but also to ensure that they're compliant. By using a framework, the biggest benefit for them really is going to be the time savings. And also the savings in their resource. So in that sense, that will give them a cost saving. So it's not always about getting very much the cheapest price, but it's about looking at the potential savings overall. So we've already gone out and we've done the process. You know that whichever supplier that you use on our framework will be fully compliant. And we will also offer you the guidance and support both before, during and after. So by using a framework, if you then have an issue with that supplier further down the line while your contract's in place, what we can do is then help you with the escalation process. So we can get involved and step in and try to negotiate with them as to ways around any issues you might be having. If you've not used one of our frameworks or a framework, then you can be missing out on some of that valuable support, which you would then end up having to try to resolve some of these issues yourself or getting in costly legal advice. So there are very much a lot of benefits towards using a framework than just going out and doing your own procurement process.
Thanks, Stephanie. I think you've clearly spelt out the benefits for customers on frameworks. But Victoria, these benefits aren't unique to the customer, are they? There are benefits for suppliers from frameworks.
Definitely, and SMEs should have confidence in frameworks for public sector contracts, because they provide a structured and transparent procurement process. They allow SMEs to compete on a level playing field with larger organisations, as they're designed to promote fair competition and equal opportunities. Simplified tendering procedures benefit the supplier too, SMEs or otherwise, leaving time to concentrate on the day job and not form filling. And let's not forget the key benefit, and that is access to a wide range of potential projects, which again comes back to awareness. Frameworks have not been part of the conversation for many SMEs, and they need to be. Ultimately, this is it has to be about increasing the chances of securing contracts and expanding businesses within public sector. And that can only come about if suppliers fully understand and engage with the framework process.
Thanks, Victoria. That's very much what this webinar is about, is helping suppliers understand the process and engage with it more effectively. But if there's an SME watching this, one of the burning questions is, and this is for you, Stephanie, can SMEs be awarded business through a framework as easily as another supplier?
So the answer to that is yes. The main challenge is getting onto the framework, which hopefully we will be able to support SMEs with. Once on a framework, all suppliers are treated equally. So that is part of the procurement processes. They're the regulations that have to be followed. That is the guidance that is given to all customers. If you are doing a further competition, all suppliers have to be invited that are capable of providing that service. Therefore, the opportunities are there for all organisations, regardless of their size.
Yeah, thanks for that. And You touch on the 2023 Procurement Act and government directive to engage more fully with different types of suppliers across the UK. Victoria, this is sort of underpinning everything that's happening at the moment. What is the view from the supplier side?
We're delighted that KCS are not only making access to frameworks easier, but are putting the weight behind it as well. But picking up on the government's directive on this, of particular interest to SMEs has been watching the government's plans to deliver more open frameworks. The key is that the government's desire to put measures in place to remove barriers for SMEs, to introduce new dynamic markets and give greater flexibility all round. And this means flexibility for public sector organisations to select SMEs from frameworks. Remember that until now, not that many SMEs have applied to be put on frameworks. The shift in thinking from the government is critical. And as SMEs, we've been receiving relatively smaller amounts of reported direct government procurement spending than we were 5 years ago. And to put some numbers to that, in 2016, 25% of public sector procurement spending was awarded directly to SMEs. By 2021, that figure has dropped to 21%. And then that brings us to the 2023 Government Procurement Act, which will be rolled out this autumn. For suppliers, this means several changes and potential opportunities. Firstly, the Act aims to create a simpler and more transparent system for everyone, which we welcome, making it easier for suppliers, especially SMEs, to win contracts. This should be seen as great news for smaller businesses looking to compete in the procurement market, but also for those awarding contracts. They'll be better placed to look at appointing approved SMEs who can be more effective, certainly more nimble than larger suppliers.
Yeah, I think that's a very good insight there into the changes that we're all having to navigate. Let's get down to some more nitty-gritty elements of this. Granby are on the Courier Services and Specialist Logistics framework, as we discussed at the beginning. But Stephanie, what framework categories does KCS Procurement have beyond that?
So we currently have 12 categories under which we have multiple frameworks. So we have increased significantly over the past 24 months and will continue to do so over the next year or so. We are going from around 23 frameworks to in excess of sort of 60 frameworks. Under that as well, under each of those categories, as I say, there are multiple frameworks for various products, goods and services. All of our frameworks, when they're advertised, are advertised through the Delta e-sourcing portal. So the best piece of advice is to get onto those portals. If you register on there, once you've expressed an interest in a framework agreement, you'll get the documents to be able to complete it. A good point is not to wait until a framework comes up before you do that. Get registered on there as soon as possible, and then you will get the opportunities directly sent to you. On our website, we have a list of all of our frameworks that we have, and they will include start and end dates as well. So if there is one that is currently running, we cannot add suppliers to a framework during its term, but once that framework has expired, we will be doing the renewal. So we always work around a year in advance. So if you have a framework that's coming to an end, say March 2025, we will be starting to look at that now, and we will look to have documents out within the next 6 months. So it's always worth having a look in advance and just documenting when these opportunities will be coming up. Once you've actually expressed your interest and you've got the documents, please read through carefully, read through every single part of those papers, because they will tell you everything you need to know about tendering for the position on the framework, but also what our expectations would be of you. So they will cover what is covered under the framework. One of the biggest issues that are faced by suppliers is by not reading the questions properly, particularly the scoring methodology that we are going to use. That will tell you exactly what we're looking for in an answer. So we're not just looking for somebody who answers the question, we're looking for what additional benefits they can bring to the framework. We're looking for people to go that extra step. So if we're asking for helpline support from 9 till 5 and you're able to offer from 8 till 4 or 8 till 6, if you can offer that online and you've got a 24/7 process for registering, various things like that can really add benefits, rather than just say, yeah, we can provide what you want. It won't give you the scores that you potentially need in order to be on there. So it is a simple process if you follow the directions that are all there. And also there is a checklist for documents. Sometimes if we have documents missing, we can't always ask for them after the event. So it really is read the documents, ask the questions, use the portal for clarifications, and just make sure that you're getting your responses on there in plenty of time before the deadline finishes. Once the deadline has gone, it will shut down and you will not be able to put your responses on. So as long as you're following the instructions, then it really should be a straightforward process.
Thanks, Stephanie. So yes, you've spelled out what appears to be a very straightforward process. So long as you do, as you say, read the instructions, follow the rules, and it should be relatively straightforward and simple. But let's ask a supplier whether that's the case. Victoria, is it as straightforward and simple as Stephanie has just suggested?
Ultimately, yes. I mean, look, I appreciate that the thought of frameworks may be intimidating, but the reality is anything but that. KCS and other frameworks support suppliers. The key information at each step of the process is there, making it relatively painless and straightforward. The process for applying for KCS Procurement Services framework is streamlined, clear and straightforward. SMEs have absolutely no need to be intimidated by the process.
There you go. Okay, well, that's very clear and straightforward. No need to be intimidated. We've had a few questions in from both customers and suppliers, and one that keeps cropping up again and again is for Steph. What is a further competition? And can you shed some light on this?
Yes, certainly. So a further competition is sometimes also known as a mini tender. And that is a process by which a customer can reopen competition under a framework with the awarded suppliers. So what you would then do is we have templates in place to support this as well, but a customer will put out their requirements for exactly what it is that they need. They will be asking for the service level that they need. They will be letting you know exactly what the service or the goods that are required are, and it gives all the suppliers the option to respond and also to give the pricing that will then form that contract. So in order to do that, obviously it is sent to all suppliers that are awarded onto that framework or onto the lot that they're specifically basing the contract under. So again, it won't sort of favour a larger organisation over an SME at all. It is a fair and open process, and it will enable them to be able to put in terms and conditions that they wish for the suppliers to adhere to, and it will give them also the opportunity to really drill down on the specifics that they want under the contract.
Okay, so that's clear as to what a further competition is and how it works. But there is a flip to that, isn't there, which is direct awards, which we're asked about. Is it still compliant for a customer to use a direct award?
So the public contract regulations do allow for direct award. They do set out the guidance that we have to follow. So part of that is that we must make sure that it is set out within our framework documents when we go out to tender that we intend for customers to be able to place an order directly. And in order to do that, we have to set what the criteria will be for them to be able to do that. So that is set in all of our documents, and all of our frameworks will allow for a direct award. There are various criteria that can be used. The main ones that tend to be used are if you have an incumbent supplier that you know is offering you best value, you may want to apply to them. It's continuation of service, and that can mitigate any issues around a cost of change. But there's also around doing their own due diligence. So the focus is very much that the customer has to be happy with the process. They have to be happy that they are identifying a supplier that will offer them best value. And we do stress value as opposed to the cheapest cost. This is about looking at areas such as the time and the resource needed to go out to do a further competition, and also any potential benefits that could be made by doing a further competition. If as a customer you've gone out and you've done your due diligence and you've gone and you've looked at lots of different services that you wish to use, you've managed to narrow it down to the provider that you want, you've done a lot of the work already, that would then sit within that criteria to say, actually, I want to direct award to this supplier. So it is there, it does enable them a much quicker process, as in orders can be placed the same day. It cuts out a lot of time. And again, it is on the customer to be sure that that's the process for them, but we will offer guidance as to what the criteria is and what they need to do to be compliant.
Okay, thanks, Stephanie. I mean, there's a lot of detail there and a lot of issues for both customers and suppliers to think about. So, you know, we've covered a lot of ground, and I'm wondering whether it's worth us just on one slide drawing breath for a second. And Stephanie, if we can stick with you, can we explain how easy it is to use a KCS procurement framework, both for customers and for suppliers?
Yes, certainly. So there's very easy steps in order to access the framework. So for our customers, the first step is to complete our customer access agreement form. That is located in the user guides, which are available on our website, or obviously you can contact us directly and we will send one out to you. It's a very simple document where you put in the details and potentially what you're looking to purchase. Only one needs to be completed for that framework. So you could use that framework multiple times in over the term of the framework. You only need to complete one access agreement, but it does need to be an access agreement per framework. So if you want to use multiple frameworks, we would just need one for each framework.
Okay.
The next step is to obviously decide the route that you want to go down, whether you're going to look at a further competition or a direct award. And as a direct award, then you would then identify the supplier that you wish to purchase from. With the further competition, you would then put together your specification with all that, the support from KCS. Then you agree your contract with that supplier. And then lastly is there is a confirmation of award form that we ask to be completed. And that just gives us an audit trail so that we can check that goes onto the spend reports that we get through from the suppliers, just to ensure it has actually been processed through the framework and is therefore compliant for that customer. So it really is a straightforward process to enable the customers to get access really quickly if they need it.
Thank you, Stephanie. And of course, we are fortunate to have Victoria here, who is a supplier on frameworks. And we can ask her the question, does that match your experience of working on a framework? Is it as straightforward as Stephanie has suggested?
It is. It really is as straightforward as that. And yes, the supplier will need to make sure that they're meeting the requirements of the framework. But the real advantage for suppliers is that it's a single administrative process, and it's only needed once, and not for every contract award that goes through the framework.
Thank you. Now, I did mention earlier that we've got a few questions that have been given to us from customers, and they're probably burning questions for them to hear answers. The next one is, what's the maximum length of contract a customer can award under a framework?
Okay, so a framework agreement itself lasts for a maximum of 4 years. A contract can be placed under that framework agreement at any point up until the day it expires. So if the expiry date is 31st of March, you could place an order under that framework for a period in excess of 4 years. Now, the length of a framework can actually be determined by the customer. There is no set maximum that has been put in the guidelines. it's very much about looking at what can offer value. So there are a few things to look at. One of them can be, there are times when a contract needs to be for a length of time because there is a extensive period that is needed for training, to actually get equipment in place to get things up and running. So sometimes there is an introduction period. You know, implementation can take up to a year on certain frameworks. So what you wouldn't want to do is have that, you do all of that work and then you've only got 2 years and then you've got to redo everything again. So it's about looking at each individual contract. So with that, it can be decided by the customer in order for them to do it. And as I say, it can be awarded up to the end, very last day of a framework, and those terms and conditions will remain in place for the life of the individual contract. So whilst a framework may expire, the terms and conditions will continue until that individual contract is either terminated or expires.
Okay, so that's cleared that up. There is flexibility within the process for customers and suppliers around the length of the framework and the length of contracts within the framework. The other big question that we're constantly asked, it's a $64,000 question, both for customers and suppliers, or maybe not. What are the costs for using KCS Procurement Services framework?
Okay, so that's a good one to answer in the sense that there is no upfront cost to using our framework agreements. So once you're onto a framework, there are no costs involved unless you actually get a contract placed through that framework agreement. The cost then comes to us as a management fee, and that is based on what is invoiced to the customer. So currently, a majority of our frameworks are around about 0.75% or up to 1%. So they are very low. We do try to keep that very competitive in comparison to other framework providers, whereby we will either match or try to be lower than our competitors. So with the customer, there's no cost for them. So they can actually go through, use the framework. The cost comes from the supplier. But again, there are no costs up front, only when an order's been placed.
And I'm just going to bring Victoria in here. Is that the case? No upfront costs?
Yep, that's it. No upfront costs, and there's a rebate fee, but that's only charged once the contract has been awarded. So all very clean and very simple.
So the question is, what paperwork is used for the contract, and can terms and conditions be amended?
Okay, so there are two answers to this depending on the route that the customer chooses to go down. So as a further competition, we do have templates in place for the full process and also for placing the order at the end of that process. And we also have one for direct award order form. They are free of charge for the customer to use, and they are designed to be flexible. There is no sort of preset format. Customers can cut and paste information into that document. They can use their own documentation as well if they wish. What they will need to do is ensure that the framework reference number is on there, but there is that option for them if they have something already in place. Terms and conditions, they are made up of different sections. So again, depending on the route they're taking, if a customer's going down the direct award route, there are a set of terms within the terms and conditions which are compulsory, and those ones will apply and they cannot be amended or deleted or removed. There are then a section that is part compulsory and non-compulsory, which can be amended in agreement with both parties. If they're doing a further competition, they can add whatever terms and conditions they wish into that further competition. So they can use the ones that we have, they can be amended, they can be changed, and then they're sent out to all of the suppliers to be able to then sign up to and agree to.
Thanks for that. Now, for anyone watching this and getting to grips with frameworks and how they work, you've handheld us through a relatively straightforward process, thorough and detailed, but straightforward. Is there another element of difference? How does KCS Procurement Services differ from other providers?
The main thing that we try to do to differentiate ourselves is just to make things as clear and easy as possible. Working to the public sector regulations, spending public money it is a complex area, but we've done that complex hard work for the customer already when we've produced that framework. The actual process from then placing the contract under that framework should be straightforward as possible. So that's one of the main things we do. They're simple, clear documents to use. There is also full support from us. So whether that's from KCS Procurement Services, where we offer support of checking through documents, giving some advice on which route they want to take, which framework to use, are they eligible to use it? Or we can offer a full contract managed service, and that is through our sister company Lifecycle. So that in that instance, we can actually manage a process from start to finish, whether that's a full further competition or whether that is a complete procurement process that they need to run. We do keep our management fees very competitive as well. So we do try to keep those below our competitors, which will make it much more cost effective for both customers and suppliers to use. So in those instances, they're the way that we want to make this an easy process. And it's not just for our customers, but also for our suppliers to be able to get onto our frameworks and also to manage and work with the framework once it's in place.
Okay, thank you for that. It's very clear. But I want to just pick up on something you touched on. You talked about the importance of doing things properly when we're dealing with public money for public sector organisation contracts. Now, we know this is why the government has been interested in this for quite a while. And one of the areas that they have been focusing on has been social value. It's a prominent element in the 2023 Procurement Act. Can you just give us a quick introduction to what social value is and why it matters so much?
Yep, sure. So we do include social value within our frameworks. So we do evaluate our suppliers based on their social value offering. But that is also something that the customers then work directly with those suppliers on. So they can start to look at what they can give back to their local community. So with social value, it can cover things such as how a supplier deals with their own members of staff, so their well-being and their training and their development, as well as then outside of that to look at the local community, the wider community, and how they can then help the customer to input back into that community.
Thanks. And Victoria, I do know from our conversations earlier that this is a topic that's very close to Granby's heart.
Yes, it is. We at Granby place a great emphasis on social value. And as you say, Paul, an important aspect of the 2023 Procurement Act is that government agencies and the public sector generally are now encouraged to consider social factors when making procurement decisions. As a third-party logistics handling and fulfilment operation, this is core to many of our tenders. But for other SMEs engaged with social value, this should help with attaining contracts under frameworks. What we've seen is that businesses are now expected to contribute towards local communities in more meaningful ways. And the procurement teams are not after generalisation, but are looking for evidence of specific initiatives that benefit local communities. But it's more than that. It's not just about local, but hyperlocal initiatives taking centre stage now.
Yeah, hyperlocal is a word that's cropping up again and again. Now, moving on to some practicalities. Once a supplier is awarded a place on a framework, what's expected of them, Stephanie, and what can they expect in return from KCS?
So at KCS, we do like to manage our frameworks and our contracts underneath them. We do like to ensure that we work as a partnership with all of our suppliers. So therefore, we will have quarterly review meetings with every supplier on the framework. And we will ask at those meetings for them to come along with information around the uptake on the framework, how they're working to the KPIs, any issues that they potentially are having, and any marketing incentives that we wish to run with as a joint procurement. So we do have the MI reports that we request from suppliers. We ask for those monthly, and we do have a self-audit that we ask suppliers to complete once a year. These are, again, quite straightforward. They are standard information that everybody will have access to, so it's nothing too onerous. And the main thing really is that, you know, we will work with suppliers, and we ask that the suppliers just leave themselves open to come and work with us as well. So attend the meetings, you know, speak to us if you've got any problems, or if you've got any ideas or suggestions. It's very much a two-way process and a partnership once you're awarded on there, and that's the best way to get the best from being on the framework.
Yeah, I think that word partnership is an important one. Victoria, is that the case? You know, it seems very straightforward on paper. There's quarterly review meetings and annual self-audit for you as a supplier. Does the reality match up to that?
Yeah, it does. I mean, from our own experience, it's all positive. You know, following award support's regular and it's ongoing. The self audits, as you mentioned, are straightforward enough to complete, and it allows us to demonstrate our compliance. The quarterly meetings that we have, you know, they're thorough, they're collaborative, they're engaging. It's all about reviewing upcoming opportunities, ongoing pipeline. KCS are very good at sharing what information they have at the time. So overall, you know, the collaboration is good, and KCS are open to taking expert advice from us as their suppliers.
Okay, well that's good to hear. But that leads directly into the last question, which we're going to direct to you, Victoria. And you've just talked about partnership with KCS and how you can work together. What's been your experience so far with getting onto the framework and the communication and support you've then received from KCS?
I think KCS are very good at making it easy to apply. The tender process is streamlined where possible, but of course ensuring robust compliance, removing the onerous barriers, particularly helpful for SMEs. And as mentioned earlier, you know, the ongoing support, the regular review meetings, and being available for us to contact as and when required. So all really, really positive from our perspective.
Thanks, Victoria. And we are going to come to you for the final word, Stephanie. Is there anything you can say in conclusion?
I think really it's just to reiterate that, you know, framework agreements do have their place within the public sector, and they do offer an easier and quicker route for customers to place their orders, but also for suppliers to be able to obtain business from public sector organisations. We would encourage SMEs and all organisations to think about putting in the bids for the frameworks. As I said, ask questions. We are here and we are available. You can contact any of us. We do have Rich and MJ's details there. They are our direct channel executives, so they're first port of call. And they will put you in touch with anybody that can help and answer your questions. And really, to register on the Delta portal for registration, it is a very simple process, and it's also fully supported. So anybody that is registering on there, any problems that they have, there are a really good help information on there. They do live chats as well. Somebody will be able to help you and get you access onto there. And that will give you a really good route to not just our frameworks, but to other opportunities as well.
Thank you, Stephanie. I'd like to thank you on behalf of anyone watching that for your thorough answers to all the questions. As you say, you can be contacted on those links that you have put up on the screen there to answer any questions anyone's have. I want to say thank you to you, and I want to say thank you to Victoria for sharing her time. And just want to wish everyone a happy day and goodbye.
Thank you.
Thank you.